Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Fitton Centre for Creative Arts. My name is Ian Mackenzie-Thurley. I'm the Executive Director here, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you today and wish you all a Happy New Year. Welcome back to the Fitton Centre for our Celebrating Self series, which we are about half the way through. So we're about halfway through our season, which I was looking at today. It's all gone incredibly quickly. We have a fantastic speaker for you today. As I mentioned, Hamilton boy, but I didn't originally know that. I am a huge Cincinnati Reds fan, for those who might know me. I've been to my office. In my wall, I have a framed picture of Crosley Field. I have a 1990 World Championship bat. There's plenty of room on that wall. Plenty of room on that wall for more bats. It's been a while, but I saw my first Reds game down at Riverfront, summer of 2000. It was the Reds and the Brewers, and my father-in-law had got me seats right over the opposing bullpen, so we got to sit over there with the Brewers and over their bullpen and have a chat. And one of their relief pitchers actually just come from Australia, who had been working out in the Australian Baseball League for a while. And I instantly fell in love with baseball and with the game and with the Reds. Over, what has now been, it was 10 seasons before I realized what a winning season was. It had to be explained to me. And I'm like, well, that's good. I didn't realize what the concept was when you won more than you lost. But we got there, and we're continuing to move forward. But I've always loved being there, but I spent a lot of those 10 years prior to being here and living here in America, following on the internet, following through magazines, being online. But basically with my Major League Baseball, you could get live streaming, so we could watch all the games, which meant for me, midnight, 1 o'clock was when the games were coming in for a 7 o'clock game here in Cincinnati. So I really liked the Sunday afternoons. That came in at a nice job for me. My wife was good enough. On opening day, she always had me a can of A&W root beer, and I had a can of Skyline chili sent over, York mint patties, the whole thing. So there was a whole thing going on. So I used to live vicariously, and things like Better Off Red were really a part of me trying to keep up what was going on with the team, because you couldn't really listen to the radio or see it on television. It wasn't there as part of the community, the culture. So I was living in North Wales at the time and reading Jamie's blog, and at the time walk-up songs were really popular. That just started, and Jamie, I know, had a lot of requests for what the walk-up songs were, so he was publishing week by week what Brandon was walking up to and what Joey was walking up to. And he put on there, he goes, if I was a Red, if I was out the front there playing, he goes, what would my walk-up song be? And if you can, we'll have a competition and I'll send you a bunch of stuff. And I love reading. I spend a lot of the time on the internet reading, but I don't spend a lot of time on the internet commenting, because you get into a commentary and people want to comment back, and we all know how that works these days. So didn't want to get into a site full of crazies, and I thought, don't want to do it. And I had a great idea, and I was like, yes, no, okay. And there's a great band from New Zealand from the 1980s, which was a prelude to a band called Crowded House, but they were called Split Ends, and they had a song called Icy Red. And I thought, well, that's just perfect. So I typed that in, send that off to Jamie, and think no more about it till 9 o'clock the next morning. I wake up and ding, there's this thing in my inbox saying, hey, this is Jamie Ramsey from the Cincinnati Reds, you win. I'm like, wow, I win. He goes, this is great. You win a bunch of stuff. There was a hat and a shirt, some things. He goes, I'll just send that to you. I'm like, I don't live in Cincinnati. He goes, where do you live? I said, I live in North Wales. He goes, that's no problem, I'll send you a box. 3 days later, my box arrived. I got to tell you, I wore that hat. It was like a 2012 spring training trucker cap, and I wore that hat till it didn't exist anymore. And that thing crossed the Atlantic more times than Lindbergh. I tell you, it was a great thing for me. But we got chatting, and then he goes, well, how do you live there and become a Reds fan? And I said, well, my wife is from Hamilton, Ohio. Well, Hamilton's just north of Cincinnati, and I started explaining it to him. He's like, just because you work for a Major League Baseball team doesn't mean you're from there. You could have been from Albuquerque. But it turns out, he says, well, I went to Hamilton High School, grew up there, my family's all there, you don't really need to explain to me where it is. I'm like, well, that's a small world. So, and it turns out that he and Kelly weren't too far apart in their years at Hamilton High. So a great connection there, and a great connection to Hamilton. And as we were programming this year, and as you've seen, we have, as I mentioned earlier, we've got the Skivvies in this year. We've got Joe Sackenheim coming back at the end of the year with our Jazz and Cabaret series, and we kick things off indeed with Celebrating Self with Lieutenant General Rick Lynch, and the ability for us to bring people back to Hamilton, because you can't work for a Major League baseball team and live in Hamilton. You can't run an army in Afghanistan and live in Hamilton. You can't be on the Broadway stage and live in Hamilton. But there's no reason you can't get to those places from coming here. And I think it's been fantastic for us to be able to celebrate those people who've gone on to careers outside of Hamilton that still have a very firm base here, support base, but got the skills necessary to lead them on to college or to their education or to their professional lives that grew up here in Hamilton. I think it says a lot about what this place is, and to the next generation, to say to them, there is no excuse. You come from a small town in the Midwest. There is nothing on this planet you cannot do. And as I've reached out to all these people, they've all said yes very quickly. And Jamie Ramsey was no different to that. So it's my great pleasure to introduce to the stage Mr. Jamie Ramsey, who is the social media guru, digital media guru of the Cincinnati Reds. We did go head-to-head last year with the best bathrooms in America. Just saying, somebody came fourth, somebody came fifth, I'm not saying who. But they do an incredible job for anybody who's been down there with the Reds, with their communication and their outreach and the way they involve the community. And when you go down to a game, it's just, we'd all like to see more wins, but we all have a great time. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jamie Ramsey of the Cincinnati Reds.
I just came here for the gypsy jazz. What Ian forgot to tell you was he was the only one that participated in that contest. So I had no choice. No, but thank you, Ian. That was a great introduction. I appreciate that. Very kind. And we are doing our best down at the ballpark to bring some more victories and for you all to enjoy a World Series championship, which I'm confident is going to happen. Hello, how's everybody doing? My name is Jamie Ramsey, and I work for the Cincinnati Reds as Director of Media Relations and Digital Content. Today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, my background, and how I got to where I am right now in my career. I'm going to talk about what media relations is, what my duties are at the ballpark, and since this year marks my 20th in the Reds organization, I can't believe it either, I've collected enough stories that I can share a few of them with you this afternoon, the PG versions, I promise. And if you're still awake after all of this, I'll be happy to take your questions. First, let me start by saying it's good to be home. I grew up on the 1100 block of Noyes Avenue in Lindenwold, and there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about that house in which I grew up. My grandparents, both of whom are here today, Mary Lou, she just turned 35 last week. And Russell, he's 136 today. They've lived on Laurel Avenue, I think, since there was a Laurel Avenue, just right down the road, and I'm thrilled that they're here to see me today and be here with everybody. I went to Hayes Elementary School when it was still a Hayes Elementary School. I went to George Washington Junior High School when it was still a George Washington Junior High School. I went to Hamilton High before all the new stuff happened at Hamilton High. And after a brief stint out of state, I came back and earned a degree in mass communication at Miami University. In May of 1997, while I was still taking classes at Miami, a friend of mine who worked on the Reds ground crew told me that they were short of workers and asked if I'd be interested in joining on. I said, of course I was. And after a call from the stadium's field superintendent, the next thing I knew, I was working for the Cincinnati Reds. Little did I know at the time, but my life was about to change forever. As a kid, I was a baseball fanatic. I had all the baseball cards. I knew who all the players wore all the team's caps and t-shirts, right, Mom? She's not listening. And of course, my favorite team was my hometown team, the Reds. My dad would occasionally score company tickets while working as a foreman at Hamilton Tool. You guys remember Hamilton Tool? My dad was a foreman there for many years. And although I think he was more of a football fan, he relished taking me down to the big ballpark just so I could see my heroes in person. And there was nothing I looked forward to more than being at the game with my dad. So it was on that day in 1997, the first time I ever walked on the Riverfront Stadium turf. I found myself part of the team. A very small part of the team, mind you, but nevertheless, there I was, a member of the Cincinnati Reds ground crew. I worked on the ground crew through 1999, the same year that I graduated from Miami. When that magical 1999 season ended, do you guys remember that one-game playoff against the Mets? Al Leiter? Yeah. I don't blame you if you forgot. I tried to. Well, after that season ended, I knew it was time for me to start looking for a real job. No disrespect to the ground crew, but it was, it was perfect for what I was doing at the time. I'm pretty sure Mom and Dad didn't just spend piles of money for me to go to college simply so I could just pound dirt on a baseball field. So I needed to start growing up a little bit and start finding a career for myself. However, I didn't want to leave the Reds for obvious reasons. So I did everything I could to make it known that I was interested in joining the team's front office in any capacity. I was willing to make the sacrifice and remain with the Reds if possible. Well, as much as I was interested in the Reds, they weren't immediately interested in me. That usually happens with the girls that I would meet at that time, but unfortunately, it also extended to the Reds. But I made up my mind that I would wait out the Reds for one more summer. I was prepared to work one more season on the ground crew before parting ways with the team to pursue an occupation fit for someone who just obtained his college diploma. So it was on a cool afternoon following the following March, while I was working on the pitcher's mound, that was my specialty, I was approached on the field about a position with the team's merchandise department. I think I dropped my shovel right there, or whatever it was I had in my hand, took off my gloves, and asked, where do I sign? Because I was ready. I was ready to do this. The next day, I was the new merchandise assistant for the Cincinnati Reds. My persistence had paid off. I now had a full-time job making a staggering $18,000 a year with full health benefits, so take it easy, people. But keep in mind, $18,000 17 years ago was about $19,000 today. So my caviar dreams and my champagne wishes had finally come true. It took me one day on the job before I realized that it sucked. I folded shirts in our merchandise warehouse, which was aptly called Dead Storage. The name fit the room, trust me. It was dark, it was damp, it was like a cave, and it was probably haunted. The ceiling leaked mysterious liquids. I think it was like beer from the Big Red Machine days. And I was all but sure that I was going to disappear in that room and never be heard from again. There were days that I'd enter Dead Storage and I'd see these random blocks of Riverfront Stadium concrete lying on the floor when I come in, or on the t-shirts or caps, and it was concrete that had fallen from the night before, so that ballpark towards the end was in really bad shape. I know it may have looked good, but it was in bad shape. I could tell you the stories about the rats too, but we won't go that far. So anyway, the job was awful. I lifted heavy boxes, shipped out catalog orders, I dealt with angry customers. I did all this, and I did it all for a boss whom I didn't really care for too much. He wasn't very friendly. And although I was working for the Reds, I felt that I might as well at the time be working for like Walmart or LL Bean or a place like that. I actually began longing for my old job on the ground crew. How sad is that? I truly grew to, and I hate to say it, and it sounds really strong and really firm, but I grew to hate what I was doing. It wasn't the rainbow at the end, or the gold at the end of the rainbow like I thought it was going to be. So right around the time I couldn't take it anymore, an internship opened up in the media relations department. And my friends there told me that the director, Rob Butcher, said he would hire me if I really wanted out of merchandise. Well, you would think that decision would be a no-brainer, right? But keep in mind, no matter how much I hated folding shirts, deciding whether to have a full-time position with full health benefits for a $350 a month internship with zero benefits was agonizing and a very difficult decision to make. Eventually, I took the ultimate risk and I retired from the merchandise business to embark on the exciting career of media relations. After all, I went to school for that kind of stuff, so it was time to get with it. My parents appreciated that as well. Didn't appreciate the $350 a month internship, but my internship was a one-year deal beginning in 2001, and 2001, trust me, was a very forgettable season for the Cincinnati Reds. As that season came to a close, and my boss called me, I was prepared to start looking again for a real job, but my boss called me into his office one afternoon and told me that he was given instruction by the Reds COO at the time. Do you remember John Allen? He instructed my boss, Rob Butcher, to create a position for me in the media relations department. They created a fourth spot in that department, which was typically in the Cincinnati Reds organization, as well as the rest of the teams in baseball, was only pretty much a 3-person department. But I was lucky, and they created a fourth spot for me. I went from media relations intern to media relations assistant. This meant I could buy stuff again. And I could renew acquaintances with my dentist and my eye doctor and people like that. In 2006, I was promoted to assistant director of media relations for the Cincinnati Reds. And just a week ago, my title changed again. I was promoted to director of media relations. Thank you. About that from a Hamilton boy. Now that I've told you how I got here, you might be interested in what it is I actually do, and trust me, there are days that I have no idea what I'm doing. In season, my job first and foremost is to serve as a liaison between the media, namely the writers and radio and TV broadcasters, and the Cincinnati Reds. When there is media contact with any of our players, coaches, or baseball personnel, someone in the Reds media relations department, whether it's me, my boss Rob Butcher, or Larry Herms, my colleague, they organize or reorganize and oversee that contact. This includes when the media talks to our players and manager at the stadium before and after games, both at home and on the road. So yes, I do make road trips with the team. Our duties also include providing Reds guests for radio and TV programs, like you might Lance McAllister's show, you'll hear guests on there. We provide guests for those guys and access to our players. During the season, the media relations department is responsible for producing our media digital versions of the daily game notes, and I think my lovely wife Melissa has a few examples. If you guys want to see them, she'll pass them around the tables. We provide digital versions of the daily game notes, the post-game notes, a minor league report, stat packs, and a daily press clipping packet. During the season, we also field calls and requests for credentials and player personnel interviews, and assist our community relations department with player and fan requests. All of that is really routine for the in-season stuff. That routine is never broken, but it is challenged when the team is involved in breaking news. And usually the breaking news part requires a press release and/or a press conference. It could mean we made a big trade, we just fired our manager, we sold the team, or one of our players was arrested, but we kind of like to save that last part for our neighbors at Paul Brown Stadium. All right, that's it. I'll see you guys later. You didn't get that, right? Now we get to the off season, and if I had a dime for every time someone asked me if I work in the winter, Melissa and I would be retired and living on beachfront property somewhere. Yes, I still work in the winter. In fact, pound for pound, the off season might be just as busy for our department. Rob, Larry, and I are the longest tenured media relations team in Major League Baseball. And since we've been around so long, we're sometimes provided perks. All three of us are asked every year to assist Major League Baseball during the postseason series. Larry and I usually work the National League Championship Series while Rob works the World Series. We're basically there to help set up the pre-game and post-game interview room and provide players on the field for interviews for Fox or ESPN immediately after the game. So if you see like those guys that are running around grabbing players, I'm actually sometimes one of those guys. It's a lot of fun. It's an amazing atmosphere. The MLB postseason, there's nothing like it, and I'm so thankful that and grateful that I get to be a part of that. It provides a lot of great experience as well. Now, when the pomp and circumstance of the Major League Baseball postseason is over, it's time to get back to the less glamorous work. During the offseason, we stay very busy manufacturing the regular season media guide for the upcoming year, and I think there's an example floating around of that, the 2016 version. We're currently working on the 2017 version. We're directly involved in Reds Fest. You guys know what Reds Fest is. It's our annual Reds fan convention at the Duke Energy Convention Center. And we are expected to attend the annual Major League Baseball winter meetings. And I know sometimes the winter meetings gets confused by some folks as just being something where general managers get together and discuss trades, but that's maybe 0.5% of what that event is all about. We actually attend Major League Baseball PR meetings that take place within the winter meetings, and each team is represented in those meetings. So Larry, Rob, and myself attend those as well to represent the Reds. And my absolute favorite part of the off season, especially this year since we're coming back to Hamilton, is the annual Reds Winter Caravan. And that is one of my all-time favorite things to do because I get to ride on a luxury tour bus with a few of my buddies, including some guy named Marty Brenneman, and travel across Reds country promoting the team and doing our part to get the fans interested in the upcoming season. And my experience on that bus, I come home, Melissa will tell you, my stomach is hurting because I've been laughing so hard at Marty and Lee May, for example, and folks like that who are just absolutely hilarious. Also during the off season, we continue fielding interview requests and maintaining our relationship with the media. That's a constant that'll never go away. In fact, I still have my phone on just in case something happens. Not that you guys should know anything, but just in case. And then in the off season, to continue the off season stuff, from mid-February through the end of March, the Media Relations Department heads west to Arizona for spring training. And then once spring training ends, the cycle begins all over again with the start of the regular season. It's funny because our hardest day of the year is opening day, and then the rest after that is a piece of cake. So the season kind of goes like that, unless we're involved in a 2012 season where the team is really good and we make it to the postseason. Ultimately, no matter what season it is, we maintain our connection between the media and our employees, namely, or most notably, our players, manager, and general manager. If the media is involved, so are we. In addition to my media relations responsibilities, I've taken on a few extra duties over the past few years, namely creating and authoring the official team blog that I called Better Off Red. That's been around since maybe 2007, 2008. And I now host the Better Off Red podcast, which is a supplement to the blog. When people ask me about the blog, I tell them that if Reds baseball is the delicious, sugary cereal, then the Better Off Red blog is the back of the cereal box, the fun stuff that gets people involved and have a good time getting to know Reds baseball. It's designed to appeal to all fans, not just the diehards, not just Ian, but except I can't get that guy away from our contest. But I do try to make the blog, in essence, the Reds brand, as accessible as possible without pretense or negative undertones. I know the internet is a scary place these days, so I try to make it a nice little safe haven for folks that aren't trying to debate or argue the merits of Joey Votto's contract, per se. I don't know why that topic just came up. Baseball is supposed to be fun and engaging, and as an employee of the Reds, I want the blog to reflect that this is a business based on a game, not the other way around. I try to stay away from controversial topics on the blog and on the podcast, but I will admit I sometimes try to find creative and subtle ways to defend the team if I hear or read public criticisms that are simply not true or unfair. Otherwise, I've learned the hard way over the last few years to grow a thick skin when it comes to fan or media criticisms of the team. That's just going to be par for the course, whether you win 100 games or you lose 100 games. So now that you know what I do, I think I gave you a kind of a general idea. I can tell you that some of the most memorable experiences I've had during my time while working for the Reds include, I got to tour Air Force One when President Bush was in Cincinnati several years ago, which was absolutely amazing and surreal. When the team traveled to Washington, D.C., I think it was 2006, 2007, I was on the trip with the team, and we scored a exclusive behind-the-scenes tour of the White House. When the Nationals played in Washington that year, they were still playing at RFK. But before a game one day, we were invited by the White House to tour the White House and the executive offices, and I was standing right in the middle of the Oval Office. So I tell my grandpa all the time that I'm going to run for office here in Hamilton, and he's going to be my campaign manager. So I felt really big. He and I disagree on politics a lot, so I don't think he's going to vote for me if I ever did that. But I was in Washington, Grandpa, and I was in the Oval Office, if nothing else fails. I sat in the draft room with the Reds brass when the team selected Mike Leake in the first round, which was a pretty neat experience to actually see what goes into a Major League Baseball draft and being in that draft room and hearing all that buzz and seeing all the hullabaloo and the hustle and bustle of that. I escorted Todd Frazier to his media appearances on the day before the All-Star game in 2015. And then a few hours later, I watched him win the Home Run Derby in one of the most electric nights I've ever experienced at Great American Ballpark. Do you guys remember that? So that day, if you remember, the weather was really terrible in Cincinnati with the rain. And they were concerned that they were not going to be able to do the Home Run Derby that day, that they would have to do it the morning of the All-Star game, which, would have been awful. It would have been just a really bad thing for Cincinnati, and the experience would have kind of been ruined a little bit. But I was in that room with Todd and the other members of the participants of the Home Run Derby, and they were talking to Tony Clark, the union head, and it was all of us and a few of the other team's media relations guys, and it was neat to see Tony Clark talk about what was going to happen if the weather was good, what was going to happen if the weather was bad, and then just hours later, Todd goes out and wins the Home Run Derby, and it was just a magical day all around, and it was something that I'll never forget. Something else that I'll never forget was being a part of those postseason teams for the Reds in 2010 and 2012 and getting the opportunity to travel with the team during their postseason series against the Phillies in 2010 and the Giants in 2012. And I refuse to admit that Roy Halladay threw a no-hitter against the Reds in 2010. We're going to expunge that from the record. But being in the Reds clubhouses during the clinching games for those respective seasons was amazing. I was in the Reds clubhouse when Jay Bruce hit the home run to clinch the 2010 National League Central Division title. I was there preparing for the media, and I was right in the middle of the clubhouse when no one was there except the guys that were putting up the plastic over the lockers to prepare for the champagne. And just moments later, I was soaking wet to the bone with champagne. My eyes were burning, but it's something I will never trade for anything. It was another one of those surreal experiences that, I'd never thought in my Noyes Avenue days that I'd ever be a part of. I had a beer with Homer Bailey in a Pittsburgh hotel bar the night after he threw a no-hitter. It was his first no-hitter. I was on the team trip in Pittsburgh. I usually get the Pittsburgh trips. And it just so happened, Homer Bailey threw a no-hitter, and I was the media rep on that trip. I got the, for all the games that all 162 Reds games, someone in the media relations department, whether it's myself, Larry, or Rob, keep score in our media relations scorebook for those games. And keeping score of that game was absolutely just a thrill of a lifetime. And then, having a beer with Homer afterwards was, wow, amazing. I bowled with Jay Bruce a year or two before he reached the big leagues. That was interesting. Gave him some tips. Told him who to stay away from on the team. So I'm sure that really went over well when he became friends with him. I also bowled with Brandon Phillips a few times. I bowled with him once. It was just us two in spring training, and he to show off that he was a better bowler than I was, he threw a strike left-handed. He threw a strike right-handed, and then he proceeded to throw a strike when he bowled through between his legs. So that was interesting. One of a really odd, bizarre experience in my time with the Reds was in 2010. The team flew me to Sarasota on the day Joey Votto was named the 2010 Most Valuable Player. I was there. I flew to Sarasota. Took a rental car to Joey's house in Sarasota to handle all of his media obligations that day. We were in Joey's backyard being interviewed. He was being interviewed by MLB Network, ESPN, everybody. We knocked it all out in one day at his house, which was strange for a variety of reasons. But and then flew back to Cincinnati that night, which was crazy. A little side note to that story. You guys know who Jose Fernandez was? The late pitcher for the Miami Marlins. Bob Miller, the assistant general manager on that, came with me on that trip to Sarasota. And I thought he was there just to make sure I didn't screw anything up. Come to find out, he actually had some faith in me. And he was there on a certain reconnaissance mission. There was talk that Jose Fernandez, at the time nobody knew, or the general public didn't know who he was, but he was a second away from being eligible to be signed by the Cincinnati Reds. So if you could imagine having Jose Fernandez on that 2010 team, or that 2012 team, I should say, you'd be looking at my shiny new World Series ring. But unfortunately, it wasn't the case. The rules kind of dictated that Mr. Fernandez was not eligible at the time, and Bob unfortunately had to go back and tell Mr. Castellini that. Not me. Attending the winter meetings every year and riding on the annual Reds Caravan, like I said, that's just a huge perk. That's not even, to me, that's not even a duty. That's just something fun that I get to do. Just riding on the bus with folks like Marty, my dear close personal friend Ryan Rizzo, Lee May, who I've become friends with over the years, who might be the funniest man on that planet Earth, Doug Flynn, Eric Davis, Dimitri Young, Brandon Phillips, Devin Mesoraco, Zach Cozart, Homer Bailey, Bob Miller, Chris Sabo, and Tom Browning. And in 2011, the Caravan stopped here in Hamilton, and it was the last time I saw my friend Ryan Friel, who passed away a year or two after that. But we are coming back to Hamilton. We like to deem ourselves the rock star leg. We have a friendly competition with the other three legs of the Caravan, and no matter what, we always hold our nose up as if we're the best, and it irritates them pretty mightily. So the rock stars are coming back to Hamilton in 2 weeks at the Parish Auditorium, so I hope to see you guys there. Another kind of a more somber experience that I was privileged to be a part of was being on the Reds charter bus the day we traveled to Fairfield High School for Joe Nuxall's visitation. It was the only time I sat across from Marty, sat across on the bus next to him across the aisle. And it was the only time I've ever seen him as somber and as emotional as he was that day. He had just lost truly a best friend and a longtime colleague, and my heart was breaking for him that day. And it broke for the Nuxall family, and it was a very emotional day for me, being from Hamilton. And there I was, paying my last respects to Joe, who I became friends with and became a very good friend of mine through the years. And speaking of Nuxie, I have two happier stories regarding Joe. Like any good Hamilton boy, I grew up playing the card game Pitch. Do you guys play Pitch? Yes. The guys on the ground crew and I used to play a lot of pitch during our breaks, and one time Joe passed by our locker room and asked what we were doing. He'd come in, "What are you guys doing?" So we told him we were playing pitch. He perked up. He said, "Hey, I'm in." So Joe sat down with us and played pitch, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. 18-year-old me playing pitch with one of my childhood idols. The next story involving Joe took place in the year 2000 when I was on my first ever road trip with the team. It was just before the All-Star break, and the Reds played a brief one-city series in Minneapolis. It was right before, as soon as we got back, we were entering into the All-Star break, so everybody was pretty happy about that. However, on the way back to Cincinnati, we ran into some awful, terrible, biblical-like weather. Our plane was dipping and diving due to the turbulence. The lightning was flashing through the windows. And a few of our players, I kid you not, Dimitri Young, were in the back of the plane screaming and literally crying. It was something out of a nightmare. It truly was a nightmare. My first ever trip with the team, number one, if I live through this, I'm never allowed back because we lost the series as well. So there's no way. Get them out of here. So the weather was bad. Players are crying, screaming, freaked out. The pilot comes over the intercom to say that the weather is getting progressively worse as the closer we get to Cincinnati. So we're going to go ahead and land in Louisville. Our charter plane lands in Louisville, and once the rain lets up a little bit, they allow us to get off the plane if we want and hang out in a covered area on the tarmac. The weather had let up a little bit, that we were just waiting for a break in the clouds closer to Cincinnati, so they had this odd little covered area on the tarmac. We're on the tarmac of the Louisville airport. So some of us stay on the plane, some of us get off. A lot of the players got off because they were freaked out, and they didn't really want to be on the plane after that. So a lot of them went ahead and rented cars to drive. Grown men, people. These are grown men. So a lot of them, they went ahead and they rented cars. And I swear to you, the second that they all departed, I would say it was like 99% of the players. I think Justin Atchley maybe stayed on because he didn't have enough money to rent a car. People like that, 2 rookies or so. So as soon as they go to rent these cars, the pilot informs all of us remaining that there's a break in the weather, and we're going to be wheels up in just a few minutes. One problem: we could not find Joe Nuxall because he did not rent a car. I can trust me. We all knew that he wasn't going to rent a car. So we're all buckled in. We're ready to go. We're ready to have this nightmare from hell over with, but we couldn't leave Joe Nuxall. There's no way. I wouldn't be invited here today if we left Joe Nuxall. So our traveling secretary, Gary Wayhoff, had to get off the plane to look for Joe. Nuxie was found outside of that covered area on the tarmac on the Louisville airport, spread out on one of those really uncomfortable looking metal chairs that the wrestlers used to hit each other with. Spread out, enjoying a nice post-thunderstorm smoke. His nice quiet moment was ruined when Gary found him and said, "God damn it, Nuxie, let's go, we're getting the hell out of here." Gary used some colorful language. It was the fastest I've ever seen Joe Nuxall move in the many years that I've known him. I thought he was an Olympic athlete. He got up out of that uncomfortable seat, threw his cigarette away, he called them heaters, and climbed up on that plane, and we beat the players by about 2 hours home. And speaking of cigarettes, another one of my memories from Riverfront Stadium was when I started in the Reds front office. Remember when I told you about the awful merchandising days? Well, it didn't take long for me to see that all the office doors on our office level, and the door jambs were cigarette butts and ashes. Like, this is disgusting. And then somebody that had been there for a while said, "Yeah, well, get over it because it's Mrs. Schott's personal ashtrays." We were supposed to call her Mrs. Schott. Mrs. Schott would go up and down this hallway, and at the Riverfront Stadium offices were really unique because they hadn't changed since 1970. Everything was still the same. The awful red carpet that spanned, I remember it like really vividly. But Marge would go in, make sure everybody was, she'd visit with her employees, make sure everybody was doing their job. But it was also, you could smoke back then in the offices. And Marge would go around, "Hi, honey." Put her smokes out in the door jambs of all the offices. And man, if I would have thought of it, I would have saved some of those and auctioned them off, or brought them in here for you guys to pass around today. But going back to road trips for a moment, and this one just happened recently, and it was by far the most memorable road trip I was ever on. It was the one I took with the team again to Pittsburgh just a few years ago. I should get a timeshare in Pittsburgh. At about 6:30 in the morning, I received a phone call in my hotel room from the Pittsburgh Tribune. Not good. They asked me if the Reds had any comment on the overnight incident involving Aroldis Chapman. Apparently, Aroldis' hotel room was burglarized, and his female friend staying in his room was tied up bizarrely, she was tied up with like napkins. I don't know how that works, but she was tied up. And, pardon my language, but this was a complete oh shit moment for me. Because I had never, ever had to deal with anything like this, let alone by myself on the road. Eventually, we got all the facts, and I proceeded to do the best I could before it was time to go to the clubhouse for that day's game to allow the media into the clubhouse for their daily meetings with our players and our manager. The best thing that I could do at that time, now this was going to be a lingering story with negative results. So the best thing that, I was in contact with some folks back in Cincinnati, and the best thing that we could really do at the time was offer no comments, do the standard, can't comment on any criminal investigation. So it was a lot of no comments, a lot of trying to dodge the situation, but keep things under control as well. And our only defense was basically to grin and bear it and let it pass. But then an amazing thing happened that day. Right around lunchtime that day, there was an angel from the heavens named Todd Frazier decided to save a choking man's life by using the Heimlich maneuver on him. So all of a sudden, my job went from the worst possible scenario to the best in a matter of just a couple of hours. And I owe Todd Frazier a debt of gratitude for that day, because all of the headlines about the Reds that day weren't negative. They were actually, Todd kind of saved the day and pushed Aroldis' incident to the small column in the Reds story, which was amazing. And then when I got back to Cincinnati, I proceeded to politely ask my boss never to send me to Pittsburgh again. I was on a road trip once where on an off day in whatever city we were in, I came back from dinner and I saw a very tall 6'6" Texan pulling furniture out of what would eventually be a Reds rookie's room and setting it up in the hallway. I said, well, that's really strange. What is going on? And then I realized and I recognized that person was Adam Dunn, and he was pulling furniture out of the rookies' rooms that night and just setting it up in the hallway like it was supposed to be there. So that was one of the many pranks that the guys would pull on each other, and I remember just looking at him, shaking my head, and going back to my room. I was on the road trip in Milwaukee one year when Ryan Friel and D'Angelo Jimenez got into a fist fight. That one somehow did not make it out to the media, and that was kind of a feather in my cap that I was really proud that didn't come out till many years later. Those are just a few of the experiences that I've had in the crazy years that I've worked for the Reds. There are a lot of other stories that I could probably tell you off the record, or could be R-rated versions, but I'm not going to do that. But I will say, like, some of the cities that I've gotten to been to that I may have not ever been to without baseball include Las Vegas, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Anaheim, Houston, Milwaukee, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Dallas, San Diego, St. Louis, Denver, Minneapolis, Chicago, Miami, Phoenix, New York, Washington, D.C., Cleveland, Atlanta, Montreal, and of course, spending the time in Arizona and Florida, where I live. Each year, I live 1 month out of the year, out of the 12 months in Arizona now. Except this year. I won't be there this year because something about 2 little girls are coming into my life. But and I will seg into that as in baseball, I just told you all of the wonderful, glorious, great experiences that I've had, some bad, some a lot, mostly good. But one of my most prized possessions from working for the Reds is a no-brainer for me. It's my wife, Melissa. Melissa's sister, Mandy, used to work at the ballpark on the same floor as where my office is. She was a waitress in the Riverfront Club, and I would see her every day, and we became friends, said hello. And then one day she said, "I want to introduce you to my sister." And ever since then, Melissa and I have been together, and it's been amazing. And she's getting me out of spring training this year because she's pregnant with my first twin daughters, so I'm really excited about that. So ladies and gentlemen, that is a little bit about me and my career with the Cincinnati Reds, and I would love to take some of your questions.
Stand up, Melissa.
Stand up, Melissa, if you can.
Any questions?
We can talk about the team if you want, anything you want.
When are the twins due?
They are due March 23rd, but we've been told that with twins, I don't know if anyone's familiar with twins here, they usually come about 4 weeks early, so we're going to be ready. Our doctor told us get to 36 weeks, and we'll talk about that after that. Thank you.
Do you have names yet?
In honor of being a Hamilton boy, although they are girls, we were going to name them Richard and Chester. Because I don't know if you could tell or not, but I kind of like pizza, so. I'm sorry.
What is the rationale behind the fact that they're trading away all these good players?
That's a good question. I think this is a business, as I mentioned earlier, and you want to keep your product fresh and valuable. And some of the players, that is the most difficult part of being not only a fan of baseball, but working in baseball, is when you see players who have contributed so much to the team throughout the years leave. And I think it's a necessary problem. I think you have to keep bringing players in at a very good value who contribute to the team. And as these players get older, their value on the field diminishes. It's just like with any other job. Unfortunately, the Reds are not in a position to spend $300 million a year like some other teams. I know that might sound like a crutch or an excuse, but that is the fact. And we are doing our job to bring up the next Joey Votto, the next Brandon Phillips, the next Jay Bruce. And I think, and I'm not just saying this because I work for the team, but I think the folks that are in place now in the Reds front office are bringing a different kind of culture to the Reds front office, and they are smart. We have some people in there that are really, really bright, and again, I wouldn't even mention it if I didn't think it was true, but I really think this team is going in the right direction, and I think you're going to see some star players beginning next year on the field. Some of your new favorites.
Going through the press release thing that you handed out, one of the press releases said, Reds are where the Indians and Cubs were 4 years ago. given that scenario, how do you like your GM? What makes you feel good about these next 4 years in that? Because
I'll answer that with a question. Is he here by any chance? Okay, good. No, I'm kidding. Our GM is Dick Williams. He replaced Walt Jockety. Walt's still with the organization, but Dick is now the main man in the department. He's young, he's bright, he's smart. He's an amazing businessman. He knows what it takes to run a business, which I think is important, but he also knows how to use his resources to improve a baseball team. And I think some of the things that he's come up with, a lot of stuff that Reds fans don't realize, he's already done behind the scenes. He's brought a different culture. He's brought in different staff members that specialize in different things. He recognizes fans' concerns, but he also doesn't manage with his heart, because I think that can be dangerous sometimes. But I really appreciate what he's doing to get this team on track. It's a general statement. I know I can't really give you too much specifics, but it's just fun watching him develop this system, the Reds minor league stuff that's going on now. You folks are going to start reaping the benefits of seeing guys like Jesse Winker, Nick Senzel, Robert Stevenson and Cody Reed aren't going to be as bad as they were last year. These guys are rookies, young kids that you have to get your growing pains taken care of before. And on paper, I think this team, the starting lineup for this team in 2018 is going to be second to none.
Previously, you were talking about trading and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Who is the player that throughout your tenure at the Reds, who do you miss the most that's been traded?
Todd Frazier.
Me too.
You knew I was going to say that. No, a guy that saves anybody from choking in my life from the Aroldis Chapman incident. Come on, it's all about me here. No, Todd. I do miss Todd Frazier. I can go back through some of the years. I miss Dimitri Young, who's become a great friend of mine now. He was awesome to work with. Sean Casey, of course. And then I'll be honest, there were guys I didn't like, and I'm not going to mention those names, but I'm a 40-year-old man. These guys are in their mid-20s, so it's not like I'm best friends with these guys, and it's not something that I hang out with these guys on occasion, but there are guys that have become near and dear to me, and just like anything, just like the people you work with. So Todd Frazier and Sean Casey and Dimitri Young are a couple guys right off the bat that come to mind.
I think a goosebumps moment for everybody in the area was when the Big Red Machine came back on the field. And of course, with Pete Rose actually allowed in the stadium doors. Do you have any stories from that experience?
The only stories that I can tell you from that experience was being on the field when that happened, being next to Pete when his name was announced over the loudspeaker. And like you said, I was every bit enjoying it as much as you were. It was a goosebumps moment. Those guys, usually when some events like that happen, and we've had a few of those Big Red Machine gatherings over the last couple of years, those guys gather earlier in the day. They get together all weekend, and I swear those guys, and it's almost become cliche now, but when they're all together, it might as well be the Rat Pack in Vegas. They are absolutely the most entertaining group of men. They cut on each other. They tell great stories, and it's that's something that I hope you guys really keep appreciating while we still have it. I know one or two of the guys are in poor health these days, so that was also something that I looked at, and it's like, this isn't going to be a part of us in 10 years. So enjoy it while you can. And again, those guys are incredible. Regarding, if I can tell kind of an off-color story a little bit, no pun intended for what I'm about to say. One of those guys, Marty tells a great story about Davey Concepcion. and he was considered one of the pranksters on that Big Red Machine team. And every time the team would travel to Chicago, there's a great big statue in Chicago with a man riding the horse. You guys know what I'm talking about if you've been to Chicago? It's a great statue, and it happens to be sitting or stationed where you get right onto the highway to go to the airport. So it's a great spot if you want to get off the bus and spray paint the testicles of the horse. And that is exactly what David Concepcion would do every year that the Reds were in Chicago. And Marty tells a great story about this, that Davey Concepcion would bring spray paint with him on the road trips to Chicago simply to spray paint the horse's stuff. And it got to the point where every team was doing it. Every team that would come to Chicago, to the point that the police would have to be stationed out in front of this horse, this statue, while the visiting team was in town. So it became like kind of the part of the beat, if you will, the police beat.
Bob, was that your question?
Whether the Reds win or lose, the people in this area love the Reds.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's just part of life around here, and everybody loves the Reds.
And I can tell you, we do not absolutely take that for granted. We do not lose sight of that fact. That's why we continue to come, to Hamilton every year on the caravan and places far in between and in between. And we do our best to uphold the integrity of our fans as well. We don't want to. The last thing we want to do is let our fans down. I know it might sound weird and for a business not to want to do that, but we're a regional team. We can't rely solely on the population of Cincinnati to keep us afloat. We need you folks. We need the folks in Ironton. We need the folks in Indianapolis. We need the folks in West Virginia. And you guys are very important to us. And I think that comes from the Reds ownership. We created a philosophy in the organization called the Reds Way. And it's where you represent yourself in a way that the Reds would be proud of you off the field, on game days, whether you're at the movie theater, whether you're at home with your wife. And I think it stems from how important we take the fans. And if you guys are watching us, we want to make you guys proud.
I think we got one more up the back.
I'm glad you brought up about the Reds Way, because I've seen that training and participated in some of it. The Reds Way, the best example of it is the Joe Nuxall Way. And that's being involved in your community, being visible. Now that's not always practical for a lot of the players because their hometowns are not local, but I think the more that the Reds can encourage visibility by the current players in events or supporting charitable causes in the community is really critical.
I agree with you 100%. And also, the Joe Nuxall Way is also don't be late for your flight. I think also add that. Anyone else? Ian? Okay. You guys have been amazing, and it's really, I'm proud that you guys came out here for me to share my stories with you because I'm a Hamilton kid, and like I said, I grew up here, and I'll always be a Hamilton boy. And the fact that you guys came out here to see me and support the team means a lot to me. So thank you.
This is for you. That's Lieutenant General Rick Lynch.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jamie Ramsey. We really do appreciate your time coming up here today, Jamie. Eloquent and interesting. Really what we want here for our celebrating selves. And also just to say how incredibly proud we are here in Hamilton, and congratulations on your new success with your promotion, and all the very best with a rather large expansion in the family. So well done, congratulations, and thank you for your time. We really do appreciate it. The mayor was here earlier, so if you'd like to discuss that political career, we can have that sorted out for you. Joe Nuxall, obviously before my time here in Hamilton, but plenty known, plenty said, and we in fact have a Joe Nuxall chapter of the Reds Hall of Fame, and if on your way out you can go and see Miss Sherry Rowlands there. Sherry in fact used to work here at the Fitness Centre a good few years ago, so we've got some things cooking up with the Reds Hall of Fame here in Hamilton and here at the Fitness Centre indeed, so watch this space, and we're glad to be hosting here with the Joe Nuxall chapter, which I believe have just got their incorporation papers in the last couple of months. So really exciting times, and what a great way to honour a fantastic ambassador for baseball, and then of course here in Hamilton. Thank you, Jamie Ramsey. We'll see you again here at the Fitness Centre very soon.